An entitled Karen puts her hands on my son and steals a medication that he was holding that he desperately needed to avoid going to the hospital, with this entitled Karen claiming that she needs this medication more than my son because she doesn't believe that he's actually sick. And I've honestly never been more angry and furious with anybody in my life. Here's what happened. So a couple of weeks ago, my 4-year-old son was sick. He had a bad stomach flu that he simply couldn't shake. Since he didn't get better after 5 days and he barely responded to questions, I ended up calling the doctor's office. They were worried, so they wanted to see him. So we went off to the doctor's office, and we have a lovely doctor who told me that my son needed oral rehydration salts and that when he was uncomfortable, he could have a suppository or other painkillers for children. Since I did not have anyone at the moment who could take care of my son, I brought him with me to the nearest pharmacy for those two things. I put my son in a cart with a pillow underneath him just so he could be a little bit more comfortable. The oral rehydration salts were very easily found. I mean, not many people needed it, especially in the winter. Children's suppositories were a lot harder to find though, but thankfully I found the last pack at the back of the shelves. My son wanted to hold the medicine, so I thought to myself, sure little man, here you go, but don't do anything with it. Since I was eager to get home, I hurried to the checkout. As I was standing in line, I was looking at some other things for sick kids that they had behind the counter, thinking if I could use any of this. I looked back at my son to see how he was feeling, as he had just made a sound. But when I turned to look at him, I see a hand grabbing my son's hand with a pack of suppositories. I then look at the fool who had the nerve to do such a thing, and that's right when I ran into the entitled mother of this story. My son immediately starts crying and screaming. Before I could react, she wrenches the pack from my son. She starts screaming that she has a sick kid at home and that she needs it more than my son. I tell her that my son is sick as well and that we had it first. Then this poor excuse of a living being had the audacity to say that I was lying. I mean, my son had lost several pounds in less than a week because he was so sick and he looked really bad. He even felt lighter than my daughter, and she is 2 years younger than her big brother. I was sick with worry. My son needed that medication in his system, and he needed to shake this stupid stomach flu. Otherwise, a little stay in the hospital during Christmas became a not so fun but real option. Our doctor was very adamant that he needed to get this medicine and fluids to prevent this. My son was crying whilst climbing out of the cart. While I picked him up and held him, I raised my voice and told this piece of garbage that I didn't care if she thought I was lying. I remained calm, but I let her have it. I had lost every ounce of patience that I normally have. The increased worry of the past few days, the lack of sleep as he needed his mom so much, even at night, was wearing me down. I saw red and I can't remember everything. People who were in the pharmacy and also at the cash registers absolutely heard me. I asked this entitled Karen what kind of piece of trash would take something out of a kid's hand, and a sick child no less. I stated that my son was sick and this was not even a point of discussion. I said that it was visible. She then tried backing away, but I straight up followed her, and every time she opened her mouth, I talked over her. Eventually, the manager came to me and told her to return what she had taken. Now, this entitled Karen didn't give them to me right away, but when she did, she threw the suppositories on the floor and then left. I was shaking while I paid for what I had. The manager ended up sitting me down and gave me some water. They talked to me, calmed me down, and when I calmed down enough, I went home where I continued taking care of my son. And thankfully, my son recovered without needing to go to the hospital. Wow, I can't imagine someone actually taking some medicine out of a kid's hand inside of your basket. Like seriously, what kind of entitled monster would have done that? Like, you got to that pack of medication first. It's not like you stole it or did anything sketchy to try and grab it. You literally had it first and there's no excuses. Not to mention that this entitled Karen put her hands on your son. Like, I don't think I would have the self-control to prevent myself from getting physical with this person, especially if I witnessed that firsthand. So you clearly have a lot more self-control than I do, because that would have been really bad if I was in that situation. That's just me personally. But you know what? Good for you for standing up for yourself and not allowing this Karen to push you around like that. Your son was sick and you were trying to avoid the hospital, and this entitled Karen had no right to physically touch your son or even steal that medication in the first place. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My girlfriend ruined my plans to go on a double date with my friend and his girlfriend, spending all of her money and coming to me completely broke in preparation for our double date. And now, as a result, she's demanding that I pay for her entire night on top of mine. But I simply refused that offer, and now she's calling me a jerk for not accommodating her. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So my girlfriend and I had made plans this weekend to go on a double date with my friend and his girlfriend. We have had this weekend planned for a while, and I've paid for our travel costs and for the hotel room for the night. Last weekend, my girlfriend had plans to go out with colleagues for a meal and drinks. She said that she would not be out too late and would would only be having a couple of drinks after the meal. Well, she ended up staying out all night, which isn't a problem at all, but then the next morning she said she spent more than she expected to, and now she could no longer afford the double date. She said I would have to pay for everything, or we would have to cancel because she can't afford it. Now, I was so annoyed because she had known about the plans for weeks, so she really should have planned for it. I told her that she should have come back when she said that she would instead of staying out, and then we wouldn't have this problem in the first place. She just said that she didn't plan on it, but that no one else was leaving and people wanted her to stay, so she ended up sticking around. But I just said that she should have thought about the other plans that she had and not expect me to pay for her night because she decided to ignore the fact that we had made plans. She said that was unfair and that I was wrong for being angry with her. I told her how awful it's going to look canceling now just because she decided that her colleagues were way more important and because she refused to say no to them. She just repeated that I was being unfair and that we don't have to cancel if I pay for her share of the night. But I refused, and I told her that I can lend her money and she can pay me back, but that I'm not paying for her just because she went over budget at the work event. She refused the offer of me lending her money and said that I was being a jerk for starting an argument. So honestly, am I the jerk here? What should I do? I don't think you're the jerk at all, honestly. I think your girlfriend was being very irresponsible, and now she's feeling the full weight of it. Like seriously, all she had to do was put money aside for this trip. Like that's a very small thing to expect, honestly, for a night out with you and your friend. This also doesn't sound like your average double date. Like it really seems like you planned big for this, and you even have a hotel set up for the night just to enjoy this. So yeah, I don't think you're the jerk. I think your girlfriend's being unreasonable, especially with her being like, no, I'm not gonna pay you back, but you still need to pay for my night in full. It's like, seriously, at least compromise a little bit. Because at the end of the day, she knew exactly what she was doing, and it is seriously immature for her to act like this is now your responsibility, even though she's the one that threw away all of her money. Am I the jerk for not wanting my stepniece in my wedding, even though my nephews are going to be a part of it? Because I'm honestly trying to avoid her bratty behavior, and I know for a fact she will ruin my ceremony if I let her in. Here's what happened. Okay, so for a bit of background, my biological nephews are 8 and 10 years old. When they were 4, their parents went through a very messy divorce, and as a result, I took them in for 3 years. I'm not going to go into detail, but my brother became a drunk, and the mom didn't want anything to do with them, so that's why I took them in. I met my husband through the school they go to because his daughter's in the same class. During the 3rd year, my brother got married to his wife, who has a daughter with terrible manners. She is 9 years old, so she is old enough, but she is a kid who will throw tantrum at events when it's not about her. For example, she blew the candles on my nephew's birthday, and when he cried, he got reprimanded. But I took them out the next day so that he could blow out his own candles. Now, keep in mind, my brother still isn't making an effort with his own kids. Towards the end of the year, he demanded to have his kids back, and because of how the court arranged it, he was able to keep custody. I, however, still attended everything because the boys want me to. I never bonded with his wife or daughter because the sister-in-law is rude and she is very passive-aggressive. But I have made efforts to invite them to my house just so we can bond, but she ripped up my husband's daughter's favorite doll, and then my sister-in-law got mad at me for reprimanding her. So anyways, at my wedding, my daughter is going to be the only one in my wedding party as a flower girl, and my nephews are going to be the ring bearers. We have a no kids rule, so that means no stepniece, because I know she will throw a tantrum at my ceremony. The main issue is that she wants to be part of my wedding as a flower girl, but my answer is no, because I want my daughter to feel special, and to be completely honest, she is not important enough to me to want her to be in my wedding. Well, her mother is demanding that her daughter be a flower girl, or my nephews won't be taking part. She stated that I'm hurting a child's feeling by excluding her, but it's not that I want to exclude her, it's just that I know she is going to throw a temper tantrum the very moment that she knows she is not the center of attention, because no matter what, she does that. I told my brother that if this happens, I will cut off all financial support that I have given them, which he said was not fair. Keep in mind though, I would be paying for a babysitter at the hotel, and I have chosen a venue that's close to a theme park, so while the ceremony goes on, she will be there, and then my daughter and nephews will join them for the rest of the time, and then go back to the hotel to go to bed and everything else while the reception still goes through. Because this is a destination wedding, I will be paying for my parents' and brother's room, and a babysitter, which I think is generous, and way more fun than being in a wedding, which can be stressful. My brother is telling me to sort it out with my sister-in-law, and my parents understand me, but told me to let it go. My daughter wants to be the only flower girl, but also wants my nephews, and they cried when they thought they couldn't be a part of the wedding. So honestly, am I the jerk here? What should I do? I don't think you're the jerk at all. Like, your stepniece has shown a history of being a spoiled brat, and it's always been detrimental towards you and your kids. And in my opinion, that is just completely unacceptable. The parents are clearly not doing their job and keeping that kid in check, and it's honestly not fair for you to have to deal with that at your wedding. So in my opinion, I don't think you're the jerk at all. all. I think your sister-in-law and her daughter are learning the consequences of their actions. And while you can't really control if the nephews are able to be the ring bearers at the ceremony, you can still make a firm stance that that stepniece is not going to be there, no matter how much begging and screaming they try to do. An entitled father doesn't feel the need to clean up after his destructive kid's mess. And I'm honestly so sick of this guy, and I seriously hope I don't have to deal with him ever again. Here's what happened. So I have a nearly 4-year-old daughter, and our next door neighbors has a son the same age. Their birthdays are a week apart, and the kids are best friends and love playing together, though we try to limit it because they have a dynamic that gets them really rowdy and very riled up. For the sake of the story, we'll call my daughter Frida and our next door neighbor's son Fred. Frida and Fred are not their real names. Fred is a handful, and I think his mom does her best, but Fred's dad, he is so whiny and entitled it is infuriating. So the other day, all the neighbors with kids got together to do a little winter bonfire in the backyard, you know, roast marshmallows and make bread on a stick in the fire, and so I got sent out to get a hold of some good sticks that we could use, and I decided to take Frida and Fred with me. We live in townhouses where there is a long row of garden plots that you can rent. One of the spaces is unused and full of the branches and things people cut out of their gardens, so we head over there to grab some sticks, and the kids bring a couple of toy shovels that they're playing with. As I'm trying to cut branches, the kids go into the next garden plot. Now I know the older lady who has it, and she is always welcoming to the kids playing on her plot and is always offering them strawberries or peas from the garden, so I figured that it was okay for them to play there for a couple of minutes. Well, I hear stones hitting the ground and manic laughter, so I look over and I see Fred is kicking over all the bricks that this lady had made a raised planter out of. Then my squealing Frida is grabbing bricks and throwing them. I put a stop to that real fast, and I told them that we have to rebuild the planter and that it's not okay to ruin other people's things. Fred eventually got bored with that and found a place that he could dig a hole. I told him he needed to help, but I couldn't make him. Frida helped me fix the planter and went to play with Fred when we finished. I went back into the patch of branches, cut what I needed, and came back out after 3 minutes. Now, I had heard that they were digging in some dirt, and that was fine, but as I'm coming out, I hear the impish voice of someone saying, "Oh, we know we're being naughty," as well as them giggling again. Well, I found they had dug all the gravel out of another neighbor's garden and were flinging it all over the parking lot. Now, this time I was angry. Had I not just told them not to ruin other people's gardens? And now we had to clean up this mess as well. Like, this is not okay. I told Frida to run home and get the big broom, and I told Fred to start shoveling gravel back in place. Frida took off to fetch it, but Fred sat down and resolutely informed me that I'm not his dad and he doesn't have to listen to me. But I told him that when he's with me, he most certainly does, just like Frida has to listen to me. And when I said this, Fred ended up crying. So I call his dad, and I say that I need some reinforcements as we have a situation over here. Frida comes back with a broom, and I get her started on shoveling. I'm sweeping, and I can see it's hard for her to understand why she has to help, all while Fred is just sitting there playing with his shovel. So I explain it's because Fred doesn't want to help clean up the mess that they had made, but that Fred's dad was coming to make him do the right thing too. Eventually, Fred's dad shows up, and I explain what's happened, and that we need to get this cleaned up and fix this planter that they destroyed. But instead, he goes to Fred and says, "Oh, buddy, are you tired? You're acting like this because you had a long day, huh? Do you want to go home and have some juice and watch some Paw Patrol?" And I say out loud, after you get this mess cleaned up, right? I told the kids that we need to fix this before we go back. He responded to me by saying, "Nah, it's just kids being kids. Let the garden owners fix it. They won't know who did it anyways. Besides, I'm freezing out here. Aren't you cold, Fred? Let's get going." Frida then says that she's cold as well and wants to go with Fred. But I told her that I was also cold, but we can't just leave someone's garden in ruins or leave gravel all over the place. So we swept and shoveled everything back in place for 20 minutes. Frida asked about why Fred didn't have to help and got to watch TV about 15 times. I could see the cogs in her little head turning, trying to figure out why she was being punished while Fred got rewarded, and I just didn't know what to say to her, besides saying that in our family, we take responsibility and we clean up our own messes. I had to bite my tongue and not add that Fred's dad is entitled and that the apple doesn't fall far from the entitlement tree. But hopefully, I don't ever have to deal with that kid or his entitled father in this way ever again. Yeah, that's really unfortunate. Here you are trying to develop good habits with your kid, and then this Fred kid, as well as his stupid father, pretty much ruin everything you're trying to do. That is seriously not fair. It really sets a weird precedent, and just like you noted, it's only going to cause problems when it comes to I don't know, teaching responsibility, because what the dad of Fred did is super inappropriate. He basically said, yeah, it's okay to break other things as long as you don't get caught. And it's no, it's not. What if that was your garden that somebody destroyed? I'm pretty sure they would be upset if someone destroyed your hard work. That is such an awful example to set for your 4-year-old kid, and I think you were in the right to tell your daughter, well, in our house, we correct our mistakes. And I seriously don't think that the original poster was being overbearing or anything like that. He was seriously seriously just trying to fix the things that these kids had broken. And in my opinion, I think it's a horrible example to basically convince your kid that if you don't get caught, then it is okay to try and break other people's stuff. My entitled aunt always forces me or my family members to bring stuff from our home country over to France so that she can enjoy items that she doesn't want shipped to her house. And after dealing with this for so long, I'm honestly exhausted. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so I think context is needed before saying what I'm about to say, so I really need to explain some things first. I am planning on visiting my aunt and uncle in France for 2 weeks in April. I am not currently working and I'm just doing job interviews to get back into the workforce. So I'm living in my parents' places and I'm using my savings. I'm also in the process of applying to medical school, and I am going to take the medical school entrance exam before April of 2024. I was planning on going on a trip afterwards with them as a reward to me, and I spent about $800 on tickets. So it's my aunt, my uncle, and my cousin there as well. And I'm basically going to be joining them. Now, whenever they visit, we are always the ones to book hotels, tickets, and pay for gas money, and they pay for food once in a while. She is taking care of the Airbnb cost and the gas and the tickets, and I'm planning on doing the same by footing the bill for restaurants once in a while. Now, with that bit of context out of the way, this is where things kind of get weird. My aunt has the strangest thing that she always does. And in my opinion, my grandma is like this with very little boundaries, so I'm going to assume that my aunt is like this because of that. My aunt always burdens people when they travel. When my grandma comes from India, she tells her to carry multiple pounds of lentils to bring to France. When my family goes to India, we sometimes go through France when we return back home, and since we have a large weight allowances for our final destination to America, she would sometimes ask us to carry heavy bundles of rice and grains, and we sometimes have to leave things behind that we bought for us from India just to accommodate what she wants weight-wise. This always made me angry because we rarely come to India, and it's really expensive and we end up leaving our items for her. My aunt regularly goes to India, and she is a single woman who's only responsible for one ticket, by the way. And sometimes we will meet her during a trip. She will send stuff to our house for us to bring along, and this has been going on for years. So last summer, for example, we were going to India to visit my grandparents, and she was in India for a month-long trip and told us to buy 10 giant bottles of shampoo, which she paid us back for, and sent handbags and clothes to our house. She would buy this all from a US website and then have it shipped to our address. So as a result, we had to add an extra suitcase just to accommodate her things. We also have my brother with a disability, and my mom has a push wheelchair. So the two of us, meaning my dad and I, were left to handle 4 giant suitcases all by ourselves. Reducing the luggage weight is always a must for us because 2 of my family members have disabilities, and my dad also has back issues, meaning that all of our luggage is handled by 2 people. And never ever have we done anything like this. It always blows my mind. We are all the type of people to never want to burden others, and I've never made her bring anything for me. When she comes to the US from France, I have never bought things from a French website, sent it to her home, and then made her carry all of that for me when she travels to see us. It's just rude to burden people like that. It's honestly just what I think, and I've honestly just been raised to know this fact. And you also should never burden others as well. Now, similarly for this upcoming trip, she has also sent to my house 5 dresses and 2 handbags, as well as multiple board games for my cousin. She also asked me to buy 6 giant shampoo bottles of dandruff shampoo that she uses, and that she will pay me back when I get there. I also have to get an entirely different suitcase, all for this, by the way. I myself have to carry all my stuff and also her garbage, and I don't even have my dad this time to help me out. I wanted to buy a blowout brush which works in the Indian voltage, and the US has a different voltage, and my hair tools won't work in India. But since France and India have the same voltage, I bought this brush on the French Amazon and I sent it to her home. She picked it up from her front porch and it's sitting at her place. When I come there, I will pick it up and take it back to the United States. And that's the only favor I've ever asked of her, to literally just pick something up from her front door and keep it inside. I mean, she doesn't even have to carry it. And I conveniently sent it to her home so that I can pick it up when I come there. In the past, I did test her just to ask for a small favor. There's a hair dye in India that I really like, and she was going to India herself. I asked her to get me 10 packets of those so that I can pick it up when I come to France. Mind you, it is extremely light, and it's not like the American dye boxes. It's a small, flat packet with just dye and developer, and all 10 packets added together probably weighed about 1 pound. We're talking about the weight of maybe 1 to 2 apples. But guess what? She didn't even do that. She got back home to France and just said, "Oops, I forgot." She couldn't even get such a light and tiny thing, but I have to get her 6 giant shampoo bottles and carry that, the clothes, handbags, and board games that she sent over. Honestly, burdening people coming to visit me by making them carry multiple pounds of heavy items wouldn't even cross my mind. I hate that I've been put on the spot like this. I am not at all a confrontational person, and part of me feels like this is some sort of power play on her part, since she makes a lot more more money and is footing the bill for the gas, hotels, and tickets. Maybe she thinks that I have to allow anything that she does now, or something like that. Maybe she's trying to see how she can benefit from this and wants to use me coming here for this. Honestly, I don't know how to talk to her in a polite way, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Yeah, your aunt sounds really intrusive. Like, who in their right mind wouldn't just order stuff and then have it shipped to your house? Like, I can understand if it's something small that she wants you to bring over, but for you to be expected to have this giant suitcase that you have to bring with all of her stuff in there, like, that is really extreme, and that's so unfair. So I know if I was in your shoes, I would start communicating with her and saying explicitly, listen, I can't bring all this with me. It is too much and I can't handle it on my own. If anything, maybe even offer to like ship it to her directly, because the way she's having it set up right now is so unfair. And I know if I was in your shoes, I would definitely not want to put up with this. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out Easy Mode. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.